Welcome back to the show. I'm Mikhail, and today I have Daniel, who is a security expert with me. Hey, Daniel, how are you doing today?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing well. Lots to cover. There's been a lot of headlines from Ledger to Metamask, and you've got this news around bin.eth. So I want to cover the security angle of everything that's happening. First of all, with regards to Ledger, how safe is it to keep my crypto? And I personally use Ledger. How safe is it right now?
Oh, well, okay. If you trust me to tell you that, I would say it's as safe as it was before. Now, the
So what's the
problem might be that people had the wrong idea of how safe it was before.
so can you provide a little background in terms of why is the community so irate by the security measures?
So basically, the story was kind of like this. Around, like, I think a little less than a week ago, there was an announcement by the CEO that they're doing this new firmware upgrade that's going to support this brand new service, right? And the brand new service was going to be cool. They're like, okay, well, a lot of people have been complaining that they've been locked out of their ledger, right? And, Ledger can't help them. They feel real bad. So, for the low, low price of $9.99 a month, what they'll do for you is they'll give you like a recovery service in case you lock yourself out, right? And how are they going to do that? Well, they're going to do it in the super secure way, right? And the super secure way is like this. Um, your seed phrase, which you can use to recover your ledger, will be automatically split into three, okay? And it's going to get cut into three pieces so that no one person holds it all, right? You don't have to trust this one person, they say. One of the pieces goes to Ledger, one of the pieces goes to another security company called CoinCover, and one of the pieces goes to this totally secret company, and like no one knows who that is, right? To make it even extra secure, right? And so they were like, "Oh, well, that seems like a lot of trouble. Like, so I got to pay you $10 a month, and then I got to go typing in like a third of my seed to all these people." And they're like, "No, no, no, you don't have to do that at all. It's automatic, right? If you want to sign up for this, well, first we got to KYC you to make sure that like you're really wanting this. But after that, like Ledger will automatically do that for you. You don't have to do that." And so that led to the question where people were like, "Hold up, is there a back door where my seed phrase can just go out to the internet and get sent to someone?" And that's when the commotion happened. Because at first Ledger was like quiet on it. And then later some guy who was like a Ledger guy was like, "Yeah, obviously, and it's always been the case." And so then everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, freak out city," because basically I think a lot of people had this idea that Ledger somehow didn't have the ability to do that. Like they just like the whole point of the hardware device was it was so secure that by the powers of hardware, they didn't have the capability to send your key out anywhere. But when you really think about it, that's well, first of all, that's not true, right? But like, I think people are knocking Ledger because they're like, I think Ledger sort of allowed that story to play out, maybe because it built their reputation, right? And so they were like, yeah, you know what, people don't really understand this, but we didn't lie to you, and you guys just sort of assumed it. So sure, Ledger's so secure, like this thing can't send anything out. But like, I think what people don't realize is obviously if a ledger can be updated, right? If it can be updated and it can send bits out, then it can kind of do whatever it wants. Now people will be like, well, you could save, you could do this one time write to this secure piece of hardware where like the secure element just won't leak anything out and it's not Ledger's choice and everything. Sure, that's true. But the point is you have a piece of hardware that can take bits in and send bits out. So if the firmware tells it to send something out, it can. And this is why you're always trusting Ledger when you update your firmware, because the firmware is just like code. It can do anything the hardware can do. It can tell the hardware to do anything it's capable of doing. So like if it's like, you know what, from now on, just send that seed phrase right out to so and so. It'll just do it, right? So they can do this firmware upgrade. It'll work, and like that's that. So the answer to your question was it's as safe as it was before because before you were trusting Ledger to not do anything shenanigans with your firmware, and you're still trusting Ledger not to do any shenanigans with your firmware and get all the code right. Because if they got it wrong, if they screwed something up and they got hacked, that you'd be in trouble.
My next question is, so when you compare Ledger to some of the other cold storage wallets out there, do you think that the other ones are pretty much doing the same thing? It's just that Ledger made the story.
I think I think that's true. Yeah, yeah. The other ones definitely kind of are. They have the same thing. They have firmware upgrades that are possible. But I don't know of a cold storage wallet that doesn't allow outgoing bits. And so if you allow outgoing bits and you allow incoming bits for firmware upgrades, then yeah. I mean, Ledger tries to secure their firmware upgrades, meaning like the firmware needs to be signed by Ledger's private key for the Ledger hardware to accept it. So it's not like any fool could just phish you and have you like download some firmware that's awful. They would need to have Ledger's private key to sign that software. But yeah, as far as I know, all of the wallets do this. And so one thing people were talking about, if you want to be like super duper paranoid safe, is you could do like a multi sig with like three hardware wallets from three different providers, right? Because now it's like if for some reason, heaven forbid, Trezor had a firmware insider hack, and they could steal all your keys, you still had a ledger and you still had some other wallet, and you'd be fine, something like that. Yeah.
That's a pretty good recommendation. While we're on the topic of wallets, another wallet that just recently made headlines is MetaMask. And now there's this whole article that came out about MetaMask withholding taxes. What's that about?
Yeah, so that one was a so there's kind of a theme to the stories this week, and that was just a weird coincidence. It wasn't planned, but like so this one was somebody read the terms of service, and it said something like MetaMask has the ability to tax you, like to add a tax to all of your usages or something like that, right? And people were like, oh my gosh, like we can just get money siphoned from us. This is horrible, but like and it's automatic and there's nothing we can do, but like actually the truth is MetaMask can't do that. And again, people can correct me if I'm wrong, because okay, so this is I've heard two different things. One is that's bad, and the other was people were like, no, that's not true, MetaMask can't do that because MetaMask is a non-custodial wallet. And what it means is like the way the MetaMask extension code is written, they don't have access to your private keys, so they can't just sign transactions for you or whatever. You'd still have to approve sending money to them if they wanted to do that or something, right? So then they were like, yeah, so this is a lot of FUD. This isn't really true. Okay. Now, that being said, my take is, yeah, that's true, and they're right. But again, just like with Ledger, you have to trust MetaMask. And I think that's something that people need to realize. Like, people need to realize that it's true that the firmware right now is written that way, but there's nothing technically stopping MetaMask from updating their extension code and going, yeah, okay, from now on we can do all this stuff to you, right? Now MetaMask probably won't do that because if they did as a product, right, they'd look so bad and everyone would just stop using their wallet, right? So they have very clear like social reasons not to do that, right? Company business reasons not to do that. So I don't anticipate that they would do that. But people should realize that just like anything, you're trusting the makers of that code not to do something bad if that code can be updated. Ledger's firmware can be updated. Similarly, MetaMask's extension code can be updated. And unless somebody's checking it, you're kind of at their mercy, right? And like realistically, let's be real, like nobody really like checks it. Maybe some crazy guy, a couple guys will, but it isn't super easy. Like, and so I wouldn't be surprised if no one did. Like even if you open source your code and you're like, all my code is open source, here it is on GitHub or whatever. There's no guarantee that the code they put on GitHub is the code they actually use. so so again, it's okay. You're trusting people that have a business incentive to keep their reputation clean, but it's just something you got to know that that's all it is. That's what.
kind of makes you kind of makes you wonder though, this whole like decentralized world that a lot of people, crypto enthusiasts, want to live in. Doesn't seem like that is a very realistic idea, especially as from a regulatory perspective, we're only going to get more strict. And so, like, how do you create that type of world that a lot of people want to live in, where total privacy, total decentralization? I'm sure somebody out there has a some thoughts on that, but it just makes it a lot more challenging, right?
Yeah. So I think you're totally right. I think that right now Web3 is still sort of new, and maybe we're like, do you remember like maybe you don't remember, but in the old days when email just came out, there were a lot of like email scams like, "Hi, I'm a Nigerian prince. Please send me like $5 million or whatever," right? And like people would fall for that. Eventually, people stopped falling for that, right? And so a couple things happened. One, the community, like the tech, the email service providers did a better job filtering out spam and these like scam phishing emails. They're doing a better job, right? That's an ongoing thing. And the other thing is just the community got a little smarter as to like how the technology worked and what could happen and what couldn't happen. But I remember before when the email came out, people were confused because like not as bad as in Web3, but people were like, "Oh, I thought email is trustable or whatever. And there's guaranteed delivery." Yeah, there's guaranteed delivery, but you don't know who's sending it, right? And like they could put whatever name they wanted on there, and like you would have to like pay attention to their email address to make sure that you weren't getting some scam from somebody. And I think like people just don't. Web3 is right now the technology is too new, and there's not enough people who really understand exactly how it all works. Web3 has done itself a disservice because they've really overstated the amount of security that you get from Web3, the amount of privacy and security, and people just don't understand it. They think that smart contracts are a panacea. They think that DAOs are ungameable. They think that like just because something's on chain, it's safe, but they don't really understand what it means, right? And so like just like for example, they think like, well, if something's on chain, there's no possible way that you could ever rewrite history. Actually, that's not true, right? What people don't understand is like even in Ethereum, if they just did a client update and all of the validators and stuff decided they could do a fork and roll back a block, which they did during the infamous DAO hack in I think 2016 or something. They did that and they forked the chain. So like even things that are on chain technically can be reversed. And people just have to understand who they're trusting and what they're trusting, right? What's the technology and who are the people? And I think that's a big problem in Web3 that just it needs a little marketing facelift. It needs to correct a lot of the misconceptions that people have because if you keep letting them have these misconceptions and they keep getting hurt, they're not going to want to be in this space.
And one of those misconceptions is that, just because, say, like an auditing firm audited certain smart contracts, that means they are quote unquote certified, right? Like that's obviously like not the case. Like a lot of auditing firms, what they do is they provide an analysis of the current state of the contracts, and it's like, hey, do as you wish at your own risk. This is the current state of these contracts. And a lot of people feel like, oh, it's been audited by this company, must be legit. And that's something that I think there's a lot of education that needs to happen around that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, I wasn't going to bring this up, but it's cool that you brought this up. Like, I think audit as a word is a little confusing because, like, I think when people think about an audit, they think like an audit is some type of like inspection, right? And you have to like live up to a certain set of standards in order to pass an inspection. That's what an audit is, like an IRS audit. They had to check if you follow the rules. Usually, an audit is actually something that scares the person being audited or the party being audited because they're basically getting called out for all the stuff that they're doing wrong and potentially fined, potentially punished, right? And like, but when we talk about smart contract audits in Web3, I think that that's not necessarily what's going on. If you asked me, at least at the moment of this recording, a lot of audits are more like security checks, and they're geared to protect the party they're auditing from being hacked. That's very different from doing an audit and having a set of standards and then meeting those standards, even if it's against the wishes of the party being audited, right? Like, I think some people have in their minds, oh my God, an audit means that there has to be a set of standards where the user's protected, where there's no chance that this project's going to rug pull, there's no chance that this project's going to get hacked, that this thing doesn't have any centralization risk, and like if they don't have those things, then they don't pass. They don't even get anything. They don't get any type of mark of approval. But that isn't the way that Web3 auditing companies work right now. I think right now they're just like, okay, if you hire us to do an audit, we'll check your code, we'll check your project, we'll write down everything we see. But at the end of the day, they cannot. Like the auditing company has no power to enforce whether or not that customer changes anything, right? So they could say you have all
Yeah.
these vulnerabilities, and then the customer could be like, yeah, whatever, I know, I'm good. I paid you to just tell me, but I'm still gonna do it like that. Or like you have all this centralization risk, and if your private keys get stolen, your users are in trouble, and they're gonna go, okay, I understand, and so I think like yeah, people have to realize, and I think some people know this, but actually, you know what, you're right. Not everyone knows this because I still hear outcries on my Twitter timeline about it. Like, yeah, an audit isn't like something where it's like, oh, we've got this set of security standards and we're making sure absolutely that these guys have to do this. And if they don't, then we're not even going to claim that we audited them unless they pass and they get a passing cert. It just doesn't work that way right now.
And sometimes there's things that happen outside of smart contracts, like what happened with bin.eth. Can you shed some light on that?
Yes, another example of knowing what you're trusting and who you're trusting, right? Like this was a weird one that sort of shows you the mentality of people on Web3. So the story was that there was this guy called Ben.eth. We don't know who he is, guy or girl, whatever, entity, thing, person. And Ben.eth launched a coin. The coin was the Ben coin. And then BitBoy got behind it because BitBoy's real name is Ben Armstrong. And then it kind of like mooned a little bit, right? It kind of pumped. So then people were like, oh my gosh, Ben.eth has the Midas touch. And Ben.eth decided to release another coin called PsyOp. Okay. And with PsyOp, he did something weird where he was like, you know what? We're doing a pre-sale, but in order to simplify things and make it safe, if you want to get in on the pre-sale, send money to my wallet directly. And I don't know why people did it, whether they didn't care that it was not secure, or for some reason they just thought that in the crypto space, this kind of thing is secure, which I actually think is the latter. People sent him like over like 3,500 ETH. I think the total was like over $7 million in like at current ETH prices. And like now that I think about it, on my timeline, people were crying like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe like I got hacked or scammed or whatever." So I think they didn't realize what was going on, which is funny because I don't think Ben.eth really hit it. But anyway, the point is, here they go, trusting this person. They have no idea who this is, and sending this person money. And there's nothing stopping this person from just not even releasing the token, or not or just running away with the money, right? Just throwing it in a mixer somewhere, or just making off with it. And like ultimately, at that time people were scared he wasn't even going to release PsyOp coin to those people who paid him. Ultimately he did, but the funny part was he released only like 5% or 6%. Like people throw away numbers like 1.5% or 5%, and then he holds like over 90%. And then he made like a liquidity pool with it, and with not even close to the amount of ETH he received in the pre-sale. And so the price of that coin isn't going to come close to like what people paid into it. And he can dump on them anytime he wants because he's got 90+%. So if he ever wanted to just sell it all and take whatever ETH that he put into the pool back, he could, right? So people were just, there was a lot of clamor on the internets because people were like, wow, this is just the weird level of ignorance and like the people are in the space are in right now, and they just end up trusting people to some insane degree, right? And that's just how it is. I mean, it's funny because you see that in Web3 a lot. Like the whole point of Web3 was supposed to be that you didn't have to trust entities as much, right? That was sort of the marketing play of Web3. But like what ended up happening, because that marketing went way over exaggerated and got completely misunderstood, you ended up with a lot of sort of shady parties that got a lot of trust, like SBF with FTX and stuff, right? That was a centralized exchange, but still, like, there was a lot of trust there because they were like, oh, I'll use an exchange that doesn't have to be regulated by the government. It's fine. Humans aren't going to steal money if they have it or misuse it, but they do. So,
Yeah, I mean, these days, I think everything has red flags, right? Like exchanges, we've learned for a long time that, hey, keeping your money on exchanges, that's risky because if the exchange goes under, well, they have the right to use those assets and to pay off their investors. And now we're hearing, about Ledger and, MetaMask. So there's not a fail-proof way of doing it, or so it appears. You're hearing more and more stories about this. Everything has at least a little bit of risk. And you bring up a good point about holding 95% of the tokens for bin.eth, or this new token. I think you said Cyclops. Um,
yeah, PsyOps.
this kind of psyops. Thank
Yeah.
you. This goes to kind of my next point, and people just they love the idea of becoming rich in a very short amount of time, and that's why this whole like meme coin craze has happened, right? And I'm not going to tell somebody do something or don't do something, but I guess if you're going to be playing around with that, just treat it as a lottery ticket and see if it hits. And still, you probably need to do some kind of due diligence, right? I mean, at least look at the token distribution, and that goes beyond just uh, looking at meme coins, just in general, right? I mean, how important is the token distribution when deciding what to invest in? And of course, this is not financial advice.
I think it is important because like it affects the realm of the possible, right? So, for example, like in this case of Ben.eth, if you know that the distribution is 95% to Ben.eth, 5% to users, the realm of the possible is Ben.eth can possibly dump on you and send that coin to zero real quick before he even goes through 50% of his coins, right? And so, like, it is important in that regard that you have to see. It's sort of like, yeah, you have to really understand the token distribution to even understand what attacks could be possible, what you're putting yourself at risk for. And I think that's again the theme of this show, I guess, this particular episode, that like it's important to understand who you're trusting and what you're trusting. And you can't just think that, oh yeah, blockchain's safe, so everything is trustable. That's completely untrue, and it's been proven time and time again. And I think all these rug pulls, like the term rug pull is so popular in Web3 because it happens so often. So people have to just start realizing who they're trusting. I don't know if there is a better solution. If there, like, people do try to decentralize certain aspects of architectures to try to get to that point where you don't have to trust humans, right? But the bottom line is there are services where you do, and you just have to know who you're trusting and why. Get a technical
Well
friend
said.
if you don't want to do it yourself. Get a buddy you trust that understands this stuff and can explain it to you, so you can know if you can make smart risks, right? At least with your eyes open.
Yeah. Well said, Daniel. Where can people follow along, or connect with you if they have any questions?
Oh yeah, my DMs are open on Twitter. So you could just add me on Twitter. It's Genster112, JenSter112. Happy to talk to anybody anytime about this stuff.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for that weekly wrap up, Daniel. It was a real pleasure, and yeah, looking forward to getting more of these in the future.
No problem. It was fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.